So I've never been able to stick a job. I think the longest time that I've stuck a job was probably around 1 year. I have worked between 10 and 15 jobs in my life, including education. I would say out of all of those, I've probably walked out of at least 12. Having autism and not realizing, I kept trying to work normal conventional jobs. I tried and tried and tried. I tried different things. I tried different careers. I tried to stick things out and try to see if I could get used to working. There's many reasons why I can't stick conventional employment. I have pathological demand avoidance. I have pretty intense sensory issues. I have executive function issues. I have like a phobia of authority. If I'm asked to do something a certain way that doesn't make sense to me, I can't do it. If I hold it together enough to do the task, the consequences afterwards are pretty horrific. The harder and more intense I mask, the worse the consequences. So I'm going to skip past my high school paper round and the time I worked in my uncle's garage, which I enjoyed. That was not really a job. That was more just for fun. So let's start with my apprenticeship. When I left high school, I did not know what to do. I had no idea. I had no clue what I wanted to do in life. I felt immense pressure to pick something, so I just picked what was available to me at the time, a suggestion of an apprenticeship. I do appreciate that I was given help with finding something to do after school because I was completely lost. And this apprenticeship was absolute hell. I had severe health issues from it. All the stress that I was feeling during this period, it seemed to manifest in the body. This is where my chronic lower back pain started. Unexplainable chronic pain and fatigue. I wasn't feeding myself properly during this period. I can't really say much more about that on YouTube. My body was an absolute wreck. I was 16 and 17 years old, and I actually couldn't do the coursework. I was that depressed, I couldn't sit and do the coursework alongside the apprenticeship. After I finished my apprenticeship, I started college. I did a health and social care course. This was absolute misery. I didn't relate to anyone on my course whatsoever. I was extremely antisocial. And I think I had it in my head because my first impression that I gave to the class was depressed, that it felt weird on the days where I felt a bit better to start acting chirpy. So I basically became what was expected of me, which is very autistic. This was meant to be a 2-year course. I was that chronically depressed during this. Being around so much just young, intense energy, I could not deal with it. My brain was in like a survival mode for the whole state of this course. I actually blacked out this year. Like there's a few years that I have a patchy memory for because of the depression. This year, this college, I have like no memories, no crystal memories anyway, of this college and this course. I was in this cloudy, murky depression for what should have been 2 years, but they actually let me finish after 1 year because I was that depressed and I could not do the coursework. Lovely teachers, they took pity on me and they signed it off for me. I don't know why they did that. I think it would have made the college look bad if I walked out halfway through. So they passed me for the 2-year course after the 1 year. As a result, this was probably the first commitment as an adult that I just walked out of and couldn't do. I started working in a care home around the age of 18 and I did not last long at all. It was a work placement that turned into a job. And this is the job where I used to drink wine before going in because it was that overstimulating, having to basically be a carer. I couldn't do it without being under the influence. So that was not sustainable. I left that job pretty quick, and I started a 9 hour a week NHS job, nutritional assistant. This sounded like it could potentially be okay, that I might be able to stick this job. I was so wrong. I did not last long in this job. I can't remember how long I was there. I don't think it was a year. It was probably like 6 months or something. This was horrible. Some of the staff on the hospital ward bullied me as well. They were probably miserable themselves. There was one specific person who really bullied me and could see how vulnerable and shy and like sad that I was, and this person would just pick on me all the time. I would start shaking at the doors when I would enter the building every morning. The thing about this job, it was only 9 hours a week, but because it was a hospital ward, it was that overstimulating that I'd come home from a 3 hour shift and I would sleep a good portion of the day when I'd get home. I was so drained. This is when I got told I might have chronic fatigue. This was just prolonged burnout in retrospect. I was undiagnosed autistic, doing jobs that I could not do and I was trying to force myself to do. The overstimulation from working on a hospital ward is unsustainable, and I really tried to stick that. I walked out. I was unemployed for a few months and I managed to set up a dog walking business. And alongside of this, I was glass collecting at a nightclub. I picked up heavy drinking during this period, and this was a horrific period of my life. I started having severe sleep issues. I think I lasted a few months glass collecting and dog walking, but I would get pretty intoxicated during the glass collecting shift. It was absolute sensory hell. Now after this, I left this job and I was pretty desperate for money. So I got a job at a large retail store, Morrison's retail store. Oh my God, this was absolutely horrific. I think I was here around 1 year and I felt so stuck here. One of my managers was an absolute horrific bully. Just like the nutritional assistant job, this guy could definitely sense that I was neurodivergent, and he made it miserable, absolutely miserable. I walked out of this job. I eventually just couldn't take it anymore. Working in retail, the managers were very demanding and they would bully me at times. This was a particularly bad store. We had a few people leave for mental health reasons. It was really poorly managed. There was a lot of, it was just really unpleasant. So I lasted about 1 year at Morrison's. I worked at Papa John's. I left after a few months. I couldn't do it. It was too fast paced. When I was applying for jobs and I'd see the phrase a fast paced environment, I would die inside when I'd see that. Like that's the biggest red flag, is a fast paced environment. I do not thrive in a fast paced environment. I did a pizza delivery job. I walked out of the pizza delivery job because it was too stressful, and I did a few other things. But the last two jobs that I've done, I was a cleaner at a community centre and I worked in a retail store, a small retail store. Now the cleaning job was one of the best jobs that I've ever done as far as being autism friendly. It started that way anyway. Around this time I was just coming to terms with the fact that I had autism. I was going through therapy. The problem with this job was the unpredictability. I would turn up to clean the building and it was meant to be empty so I could go around and clean. But half the time the building was full of people, so I'd have to just leave. I couldn't clean around those people. And then I get told, why didn't you clean the building? And I'd explain, I was meant to turn up when it was empty. The unpredictability of the buildings, who was going to be there, can I get in there and clean? It drove me a bit mad. Like I had to go on antidepressants around this time because I really wanted to stick the job. At its core, I could just about do it. It was 10 hours a week and I could just about do this job. But I went on SSRIs because I wanted to be able to kind of numb myself a bit. And it clicked in my head that if I have to take SSRIs in order to make a job bearable, I probably shouldn't be doing this job. So I said farewell to the cleaning job. The people there were lovely. I have no complaints about that job. And I started going to the job centre around this period, and I was pressured into finding work. They were dangling my payments over my head, and they were telling me the government was going to change, and made me feel really guilty for being between jobs. The job centre did not care how much I was suffering, so I panicked and I got a job in a small retail store. Guess how long I lasted in this retail store? 2 shifts. I was that overstimulated by the beeping, by the bright lights, dealing with customers. Like I'm actually shaking right now, like thinking about it. I get nightmares about working in retail because I was having meltdowns constantly. I was in prolonged burnout when I worked at Morrison's, and then this retail store, the most recent job, I had like what I can see now is a meltdown, and I thought it was a panic attack, and I wrote my resignation on like a piece of paper and then just put it in the office, and I ran home and I had a full on meltdown that gave me kind of like a mental breakdown. But then that led to like a mental breakthrough, because it really clicked to me that there was something. It basically dawned on me that no matter how hard I try, this isn't my fault. I can't physically do normal jobs. I can't do it. It's very real. And I think once this clicked, it kind of led to this point now where I got my diagnosis, I started therapy again, and I stopped trying to stick jobs. I made a promise to myself to never try to endure something that will essentially kill me. I promised to have my back no matter how guilty I felt, no matter how hardwired into me that not working was lazy, and I decided I can't do this. If I want to still be here in 5 years and 10 years, I have to have my back, and I can't subject myself to this torture any longer. It took like a whole year to really take that seriously, and it wasn't until my diagnosis that I finally started to, stop this self-hatred and judgment for not being able to live sustainably in a neurotypical world. I've said this before, but getting through the day in one piece is a full-time job for me. Getting up, feeding myself, cleaning myself, doing the bare minimum amounts of self-care is a full-time job. And that's not an exaggeration. I can't work a job and stay alive and look after myself. I can't do both. I can only really do one. The YouTube thing is on my terms. It's really at my own pace, so this doesn't feel like a job. But no, the shame around unemployment and the pressure I put on myself to stick a job, I just couldn't take it seriously. No matter how mentally unwell I was trying to work these jobs, I just couldn't take it seriously. I assumed everyone is like this. I assumed everyone is having meltdowns and panic attacks and insomnia and needs antidepressants, and I just assumed that this was somewhat normal and I was just weak for not being able to endure it. All the signs were there though, like I had severe sensory issues. I would get panic attacks and a panic response when someone would tell me to do something, following instructions. Like I would start kind of shaking and panicking, having to be on other people's terms, on other people's times. Again, this would cause what now I can see is a meltdown. All these warning signs I just didn't see because I was so ashamed because of how I was, and I really did believe that maybe I would just get used to it. and I would build up a tolerance. And this is wrong. This isn't true. This isn't anyone's fault other than the general lack of accommodation for neurodiverse people. I think working a lot of modern jobs is soul crushing enough for everyone. And I think having that added layer of being neurodivergent just makes it unsustainable for some of us. Now, not all autistic people can't work normal jobs. Some people really do thrive in a fast-paced environment and can stick a job. I'm not one of those people. And it took so long to finally cut myself some slack. It got to the point where no amount of financial stability was worth it. Like, I couldn't do it. It wasn't a matter of principle. I got to a point where I burnt myself out that heavily that my tolerance was actually unimaginably weak now. The first jobs I had, I could stick them for like a year, 6 months. But towards the present day, a few days and I would just run out, like hyperventilating. You don't just get used to this. It's probably the most important thing that I've done is take that seriously. So if you, in a similar situation to where I was, where you physically can't work because of your neurodivergence, I've been there where it feels like you can't leave. And I'm just really sorry if anyone is in that situation. It's really hard to be taken seriously. Invisible disabilities are still yet to be taken seriously. People will see, the government will see able-bodied people who can keep it together enough to do a good interview, and they will shame you and bully you into being normal. This really needs to change. I've made a few videos on employment and the way people with invisible disabilities are treated. It's going in a pretty bad direction with the current state of UK government. They're cutting funding. Most of us can't have access to disability payments now. I just hope that we see a change in the way we can accommodate autistic people and people with ADHD, people with other neurodivergence. I just really hope that we can accommodate this in the future. So to summarize, the worst jobs for me, the retail jobs had the worst bullying. The retail jobs had unbearable customer interactions and sensory issues. Even going into a supermarket now, I struggle quite a lot. I have to go and it's like quiet first thing in the morning, last thing at night. So trying to work a retail job, definitely the worst jobs that I've done. The best job that I've done was initially the cleaning job because I was there by myself. I could just about manage that, but I would not recommend retail if you are autistic unless it's like a small, like non-profit driven bookshop in a nice whimsical small town. My advice for anyone in a difficult position with employment, make sure you seek out a diagnosis. I should have done this a long time ago. All the signs were there. I just didn't think that autism looked like this, like what I have. I was pretty ignorant to the neurodiverse spectrum. I briefly brushed on some autistic triggers in this video, including PDA, pathological demand avoidance, executive function, and the sensory overload, meltdowns, prolonged burnout. I will probably make some more in-depth videos on those specific things, pathological demand avoidance and some of the other autistic symptoms and how I see them now I'm diagnosed and now I understand where they come from. Please let me know in the comments what you'd like to see videos on. It really helps me to know what you guys want to see. So any suggestions are more than welcome. This video really took its toll on me. There's a lot of trauma attached to those periods of my life. I still have nightmares where I'm at work and I wake up in the night with like gasping for air, and I promise to never subject myself to anything like that ever again. I understand that it's a privilege that I've even managed to get out of that situation in the first place, but it's still a struggle. Being a small-time creator, it is very difficult to make ends meet. Financially, this is definitely the worst I've ever been, but emotionally, this is the healthiest I've been. That's more important. Thank you so much for watching these videos. I've recently registered as self-employed. It's just such an absolute blessing. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video, and please check out my links in my bio